Welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, where we demystify what it takes to break into tech. I'm your host, James Hudnall, and my goal is to highlight real-life examples of people moving into careers they love, so you can too. Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Liz Wheels, a staff technical program manager at LinkedIn. Now Liz studied marine biology in school, and today we're going to dive in and learn more about her and her journey into tech. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here with you and everyone else.
I'm so glad you're here. And I did notice on your LinkedIn that your location is now in Arizona. So I think that means you moved. How was that?
You know, it was an adventure. I'm not going to shade you on that one. I had to move myself, my dog, and a horse from the Bay Area to Tucson. And
Wow.
we did it. We did it in about 4 days' time with all of us
Oof.
arriving safely. And probably won't do that again for a very long time, but I'm very
Yeah.
happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you made it and glad that it went well. I can't imagine moving. I can't imagine moving me, my wife, and our young daughter, much less a horse and everything else that goes along with that. So kudos to you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah. So before we jump back maybe into your history, can you briefly describe what is a technical program manager?
Yeah, you bet. So I support our customer journey team, or otherwise known as our go-to-market team. My role that I play is kind of specialized in that I am the TPM of the TPMs. So I oversee all the processes that our technical program managers are practicing. I look for areas of improvement where we can look at best practices outside of what LinkedIn does, bring in those, introduce it, iterate on the process so it works for all of us at LinkedIn, and then where applicable, being able to roll that out to other parts of the organization all the way up to the executive staff level.
Nice. That sounds like quite the task in the day to day. And is that something you imagined yourself becoming when you were a young girl growing up?
No, not in the
No?
slightest. Not in the
Yeah.
slightest. I thought I would either be a nurse, a Top Gun pilot, or on Broadway.
Okay.
So never really thought that I would end up playing with computers all day long.
Okay. Well, we have to dive into that. So maybe let's jump back to high school if you think that's the appropriate starting point. What were you
Sure.
doing for fun? What did you, of the three that you mentioned, where did you think you were headed?
You know, when I was in high school, I spent a lot of time performing. I was a theater nerd. I loved to be on the stage. I wanted all the lights on me. And that's really where I spent a lot of time. I was in every show from freshman year to senior year. And that took me into college as well. I always wanted to be on stage, whether it was a live theater experience or doing commercials or movies. My dream was to be on Broadway.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I also knew that wasn't necessarily going to pay my bills. And so I'd become a scuba diver. And in that was my passion for marine biology, understanding everything about the environment, what we were doing to destroy our oceans, our critters. And so that's where I started really the passion for
Okay.
marine biology.
Okay. And then, so it sounds like that move from high school to college was intentional because you had those feelings and you're trying to make a difference, I guess.
I really was. I actually, let's back up just a smidge.
Sure.
For at least one semester, I actually was studying emergency medicine as my major with marine biology as my minor. I learned real quickly that I could not remember terminology like I
Hmm.
needed to. It was interesting. I could memorize lines
Hmm.
because there was a story, but I really struggled to be able to memorize all the bits and pieces of the body. And so, real quickly, I let go of that. And that's where I transitioned to theatrical arts with an emphasis on acting, and
Hmm.
marine biology is my minor.
Got it. Yeah, not to get off topic too much, but it's almost a shame in my mind that so many traditional fields like that require that rote memorization when we have so
Mm-hmm.
many resources around us today. I feel like they're keeping themselves from people such as yourselves in those professions. So it's a shame that those, I guess they haven't updated, but that's not what this is about. We're talking about you and your journey. So at this point, you're in college, you're studying,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe so you graduate. Were you going to get a marine biologist job? Were you going to go do great things, or did something change?
So, little secret, I'm one of the many who did not graduate from college.
Oh, okay.
And
Tell us.
so there was a traumatic event that happened in my life in which I need to take care of my health and my body. And so I actually stepped away from school for a while.
Okay.
I wanted to take more acting classes. and really focus there because it was a great outlet to work through some of the things that were going on in my life. And
Yeah.
so really started focusing heavily on theater. But
Okay.
I'll tell you, my friend, theater classes are not cheap. I had to
No.
figure out a way in order to pay for all of those classes. And that is the oops that got me into technology. That's how
Okay.
I ended up understanding that I actually really loved being a nerd.
Yeah. Okay. Before we go there, did you want to talk any more about what you had to go through and any how you persevered from that in case it translates to anyone listening?
Sure. When I was in college, I was sexually assaulted, and it was really distracting. It was something that my mind really couldn't put at ease, and it got into the classroom. I remember having a teacher tell me that even though that thing had happened, I really needed to just focus on my studies, and I needed
Mm.
to put it in a box and put it away.
Mm.
And for any of you out there who have had any kind of violence against your person, whether it's emotional, physical, or otherwise, putting it in a box is not the way that it is suggested to deal with those situations. And so, therefore, I opted out of school.
Yeah. Well, I am speechless. Sorry you went through that, and yeah, I. It's good that you now realize, as I think most people do, or hopefully do, and it's good that you told them to not put those feelings in a box, and it's good to express them. Did you maybe understand that at the time when you're going through it?
I did. Thankfully, I had an amazing support system. And when I said, I think I need to step away from school, there was no pushback on that whatsoever. My goal
Okay.
was always to go back. Even to this day, there's still things that I want to do.
Sure.
But at the time, it just wasn't the right focus for me. And taking care of my brain really was the
Yeah.
thing that was most important.
Sure. No, absolutely. Okay. So you remove yourself from college. What happens next in your life?
So I was taking acting classes in San Francisco. And for anybody who's taken any kind of acting classes, they get expensive very fast if you want to take them from the masters of the art form. And
Mm.
so, in talking with some other friends that I was taking some of those classes with, they said, there's this, we all have these great jobs at this call center. Why don't you apply? And that way you can do, 9 to 5 in the call center and you can still take all your classes in the evening and perform. And I was like, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So I applied for the job. I had zero experience in call center anything. But again, because I was studying to be an actor, I figured I could convince anybody to buy anything from me.
Yeah.
And that's really where the first set of skills based came in for me. And
Yeah.
so I initially started with the company as a business development rep. I was calling on behalf of different um, ERP systems, if we really want to age ourselves here a bit. I was calling on behalf of the bond system. And the whole purpose was to explain the technology to the IT managers or VPs of IT and how it would benefit their organizations. So that was my first tiptoe into
Okay.
tech.
What do you think?
Um, Go
I
ahead.
was going to ask you, what do you think gave you that confidence? Was it just the acting classes and the things that you had learned to give you that confidence to move into a role where you had no experience? Because I know a lot of the listeners are either they might be unhappy with their current job or they're considering a move into tech. And I know I felt this way at first where, I feel like I don't have anything that translates, even though that's not true. We all have
Mhm.
experience that translates into our next play. But yeah, what gave you that confidence, you think, to burn the proverbial ships and just to move into that?
So I'll be extremely raw. There were times in my life where I was told I would never succeed. So
Mm.
that has always sat with me that no matter what I do, no matter how hard it is, I will be successful.
Yeah.
And I may have to fight tooth and nail to get to the top of that ladder, but I will do so. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what I did within this company is
Okay.
I started as the lowest part of the ladder, and I worked my way up into our quality assurance department, developing on FileMaker Pro to rebuild our QA system and make it so that it was more effective and we could share the QA results with our customers and our clients. And then
Okay.
from that, transitioned over to being an account director. So then I became, a seller. Then I was selling things and needed the technical knowledge to be able to talk to the right people about the right things. And then after that, I took a pause from all of that again and went back to scuba diving.
Mm. What prompted that? You just needed a change of scenery?
I did. I did. That was in the early 2000s, and it was time to kind of just pause and reflect on what I really wanted in life. And so I took a couple of years to go and work for Club Med,
Hmm.
teaching scuba diving in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Wow.
And then it was time to have my family. So
Okay.
I was blessed with my son, and who is now 19 years old, and went back to technology to be able to support my family, and went back to
Yeah.
that same call center. But this time I was responsible for the inside sales team and the technology we were using, which was this little known CRM called Salesforce.
Hmm.
That
I've heard of it.
not very many of us knew much about it. And so my VP of sales challenged me and said, "Would you like to manage this?"
Hmm.
And so I said, "Yes, absolutely." And originally started with a 5-seat license of Salesforce. We were shortly thereafter acquired by another call center that had 5,000 seats. So I became a part of that administration team.
Hmm.
And for the next several years, was a Salesforce administrator, Salesforce developer, was coding all things Salesforce, working across multiple organizations, startup organizations implementing Salesforce, and then some of the big players. I ended up with Yahoo for a number of years implementing Salesforce. Then I was with eBay and PayPal, and then Workday, all working as a technologist. And again, if you think about the girl who all I wanted to do was be on stage, it's a far cry from performing on a stage. It's a very different environment here in technology.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and there's so much there to unpack, Liz. Where to start? The first thing I heard at the beginning of that is the you took the couple of years off, and that's so awesome. And I just wanted to kind of come back to that because I forget where I heard it, but it's you have to appreciate the season of life or the season of life that you're in, and it doesn't just have to be this you work yourself to death
Mhm.
until you're 60 or whatever, and then you retire to live maybe a decade, to reap the rewards of whatever you've accumulated over your working life. I think it's
Mhm.
so powerful, especially to see how you and your story have ended up now, but the importance of taking like a well-timed break like that, because I feel like it really refreshed you and gave you that
Mhm.
fresh perspective to go back in. So first I just wanted to filter all that through you to see if that really did rejuvenate you and recharge you for the next leg of your journey.
It really did. In fact, I'll share a really sweet and fun story. My At the call center, my VP of operations had taken me under his wing before I took my leave of absence, and he had said, Liz, I really want you to write down your life plan. Where do you want to be in 15 years?"
Mhm.
I was like, "Well, gosh, Carrie, like I can barely think of what I want to do in 2 to 3 years, let alone 15." And he said, "Well, I'm going to challenge you. I'm giving you 2 weeks. I want
Wow.
you to really sit and think about where you want to be in 15 years and do the math backwards to today to figure out what it's going to take to get you there." Now,
Mm.
at that time, I did not know my soon to be husband. I did not know that I would be a mom. I didn't know any of those things. But the best part is 95% of what I gave him 2 weeks later has actually come true.
Really?
Yes.
I want, yeah, what more details than that, because that's so prescient, I guess, in hindsight, afforded the a vantage point of hindsight that you were that spot on. How did you decide where you wanted to be? Did you just take a couple of days to really think about what you wanted out of life and then deconstructed that?
I did. I did. I knew that I wanted to be a mom. I knew that I wanted to live on a beach. I knew that I wanted to have a family, and I knew I wanted to be successful. Now, success can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To me, it's not about a title, it's not even about a company. Success is how I feel when I wake up every morning. And success also equates to how I'm able to give back to as many as possible. It's not just about my paycheck and what I get every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time trying to think about what would that look like in 15 years. And in that story, in that plan was making my way through that organization as I did over
Yeah.
the next 13 years. It included living on a beach with my child and my husband, which we did. And it included success that allowed me to continue to grow and to thrive, regardless of anything that came my way, and also allowing me to work with others to help them thrive as well.
Yeah.
And today, that is the perfect example of what I get to do every single day, whether
Yeah.
it's the volunteer work that I'm able to do or the work that I'm able to do here at LinkedIn. I am the success that I've always looked for and the success that I'm so proud to have.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I wanted to ask you as a follow up. So when you were drafting that plan for the next 15 years, it sounds like you were completely authentic, and it sounds like you definitely didn't tailor it to something that your manager might want to see at the company. You were raw, you were authentic, you were like, this is what I want. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess I would ask you again. So the confidence to do that, I'm curious, is this just confidence snowballing over the course of your life and overcoming all the adversity, I guess, that had come your way that kind of compounded?
It really is. I mean, depending on how deep we're able to go today, there's a lot that I can share about things that have come my way to really stop me.
Yeah.
And
No, it's
a lot of people who have dealt with some of the things I've dealt with have stopped and have stopped thriving, can barely survive even. And
yeah.
I adamantly refuse to be one of those individuals. I survived everything I've survived for a reason, and I believe that my purpose is to share that, because if I can get that story out to one person who says, "Oh gosh, I want to survive, I want to thrive," then I hope that I can give them the hope and that they have a resource in me as a vessel to say, "Hey, how did you do that? Can we talk about it?" And so I refuse to stop. I refuse to take no as an answer. I mean, that sales girl is still in me. How many no's do you
Yeah.
take before you really get a no?
Yeah.
Um, but I adamantly refuse to be anything other than what I believe is the best version of me.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I know I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm sure the audience will be as well. If please dive in as deep as you'd like. If you want to
Sure.
share some of the experiences, we'd love to hear.
So I mentioned to you that I was at some of our largest companies out there, the Yahoos, the eBays, the PayPals. Fun story. I was offered a consultant job at Workday, and I fell in love with Workday. Absolutely loved the culture, the people, everything. And I made a bet with myself that I was going to make Workday fall in love with me as much as I had fallen in love with them. I won that
Right.
bet. Within 2 months of my 6 month contract, I was offered a full time position.
Nice.
And I took the position and went home that night to my then partner, who's not my ex husband, but it was the first person I dated after my divorce. He was very proud of me and said, "Hey, let's go out and celebrate tomorrow night. Your son is with his dad, and we can have a free night." And I was like, "That's a
Yeah.
great idea." So the next night, we went to go celebrate in downtown Walnut Creek. For those of you that are in the Bay Area, you know it's a fun little, hip little area. And we were having a great time. We had a bunch of friends with us. Everything was going really well. We ended up going to a friend's house for an early Halloween party. It was October 27th, excuse me, October 22nd of 2017. And I remember getting into the car that night, and he was very grumpy. And the next thing I remember is being on the side of the road. He had beaten me horribly. I
Mm.
was unconscious, bleeding from my scalp all the way down. Most of the bones in my face had been broken.
Mm.
And he continued to beat me through that evening. He drugged me to make me forget it. When I woke up the next day, I actually thought it was all a dream because of the drugs that I'd been given. And then I looked in the mirror and I didn't even recognize myself. Now, the
Mm.
face that you all are seeing today is 20 something procedures later to bring myself back to what I would have looked like had he not ever put his hands on me.
Mm.
Now, a lot of women and children, and even men who've been in that situation, would stop and give up, would give up on the justice system, because the justice system gives up on you. It's not made for survivors, it's actually made for the abusers. You would give up because of the stigma that's behind saying, "I'm a victim of domestic violence." I am not a victim. I am thriving. after domestic violence was put upon my person. There's a big difference there. But the best part about this is that I went to my leadership team at Workday who supported me the entire way through all the surgeries, through the court system, through everything. Workday was 100% behind me.
Hmm.
And to know that I had my leadership, my team, the teams, my business partners, everyone that I worked with, who, as everything came to fruition, stood beside me, held my hand, and lifted me up. That, my friend, is a story unlike any other.
Yeah, it's not good for a podcast host to be speechless, but to have gone through that and to, yeah, not only recover, but to thrive, to quote you accurately, and to see where you landed up, I think is a testament to your determination, courage, willpower, every adjective that has ever been written in that category. So kudos to you, Liz. So sorry you went through that, and good for you for working through it. And I don't want to say turning it into a strength, but I guess you made the most for, what you
You
went
can
through
say
to do
that.
that.
You
Yeah.
can say that. I use those words often because, again, there's two paths I could have taken, which was to listen to those horrible things that were said that night and to allow those things to creep into my mind, or to be able to say, "You're wrong. I thrive. I am," like I said, I'm a vessel. That's the way I see it. Is the more times that I share this story and the more that I put it out there, I take the stigma off someone else.
Yeah.
And I give someone else the ability to either say no, step out, or help someone that needs to say no and step out. And so I'm a huge believer in sharing, to the point where some people are like, "You overshare." I disagree. I disagree. Somebody needs to hear the words that I'm saying. And if
Yeah.
all of your listeners but one care, it's that one that needed to be here.
Yeah, no, that's all that matters. Absolutely. So I obviously can't imagine going through that, but you definitely did. And it sounds like you got a lot of support from the workplace, which
Mm-hmm.
definitely helped as well. So I guess, do you want to describe that getting back into, I guess, recovering, going through
Mm-hmm.
this phase and then ramping back up? How did that go?
So there were about 2 years worth of multiple procedures in order to bring everything back.
Okay.
And I was very honest with my team and said, I have to have these procedures done and I'll be out of the office. But it also taught me how to be able to delegate
Mm.
very, very well. It taught me how to trust within the teams that I was developing and how to be able to really put together effective plans. If I knew that I was going to be out of the office for 2 weeks, that certainly didn't mean that my program was going to stop running for 2 weeks. So, how was I going to keep everything moving forward? At one point, I think I was out for 2 months and had to be able to make sure that everything continued to progress.
Yeah.
And it did. And so, if anything, I would tell you that it gave me the opportunity to really take a step back and think about how to be really strategic in a very different way than I had been before.
Sure.
I am always now someone who's anticipating the worst case scenario, to put all of the risk mitigation plans in place to make sure that, should the worst case scenario happen, I've already thought about it. I already
Sure.
have a plan for it. And 9 times out of 10, that worst case scenario doesn't happen. But because I've so thoughtfully put a process in place to mitigate it, it doesn't worry me.
Yeah.
And so, as I was moving through my career, I continued to manage very technical programs at Workday and very large teams, cross functional teams across the entirety of Workday, and was able to do it with all the support of everyone possible. And when I decided it was time for my next play and to come here at LinkedIn, I was very fortunate that the manager I'd had at Workday is actually here, and that's who I'm now working for today. So
Oh,
not
that's amazing.
only, yeah, so not only has that person seen me along the way, they also know what I'm capable of. And
Sure.
so with what I'm working on here at LinkedIn, I get to get pushed even that much harder, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. No, I love that. So stepping back just a little bit, if we can move over to the technical side of the house because
Mhm.
it sounds like you've got the soft skill and the behavioral knocked out of the park for sure.
Mhm.
So when you were, it sounds like at this point you are managing technical people,
Mhm.
and I know you had mentioned, I think you had mentioned that you had been exposed to code or programming or adjacent tech related fields.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, when you were going through that, how was the learning process? And I'm trying to think for the listener out there that might, maybe they didn't go through what you did, maybe they did. Either way, they think they might want to work at a company like Workday or like LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and maybe they don't want to program all day. So all of that to say, did you go through rote programming? Were you exposed to different pieces of tech? How did you go through that part of the
Sure.
onboarding?
Sure. So it's actually kind of a funny story. Again, they're all funny.
Sure.
I didn't have any formal education. Everything that I learned around coding and architecture and development was hands-on experience. I was a developer for 7 years before I actually took any classes.
Hmm.
And then when I did, sure, of course, it filled in a couple gaps. So I took a lot of Salesforce administration classes in my earlier days. And those were great. They were on site at Salesforce. So you're working with the experts and getting challenged and getting certified. And that was my formal education.
Okay.
Then, within the organizations I was working, I was exposed to other systems, marketing applications, or applications that sat on top of Salesforce that were complementary. And same thing there, where I would receive training from those organizations on how to best use their tools. So it created this little toolkit for me that when it came to either being on the technical side and actually doing development or architectural work, I was very proficient in that. But conversely, when I was a program manager or a technical program manager, if my developers or my administrators came to me with problems, I had enough experience to be able to work through those problems with them and
Mm.
challenge at times when I was told that something was or wasn't possible. I would say, respectfully, I disagree. Have we looked at it this way? Have we tried to do that? And so it did a couple of different things. It allowed my team to have a different level of faith in me, which said, oh gosh, she actually knows what she's talking about. She can do the things just as easily as we can. So we can't really snowball her.
Right.
It also gave me faith to know that I was doing the right thing and making the right choices. And because at the end of the day, as the technical or the technical program manager, I was responsible for the technical solution. I had to be able to stand behind it to my leadership and be able to say, we've made this decision because. So not only was I saying that on behalf of my team, but because I could stand very assuredly in that as well. And so it gave me a slightly different background than others had necessarily had. Not all of our technical program managers had at the time been coders or architects, so kind of gave me a leg up. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to lie, as a female in a predominantly male field, it made me feel really good.
Yeah.
It allowed me to have a seat at the table that I'd never thought I'd have before.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I'm so glad that you highlighted that path, that on-ramp into tech from that non-traditional vantage point. And was it going back to the Salesforce credentials? Because I remember exploring some of those, I guess, trails. Was it on
Mm-hmm.
Trailhead where you
Uh huh.
were doing? Okay, yeah. They have an amazing curriculum for onboarding people. I feel like I guess I have to say that Microsoft going into Azure is as well, although I haven't explored those
Mm-hmm.
as much. But yeah, it'd be nice. I feel like more companies should adopt that thorough, visual, and fun learning process because
Mm-hmm.
the couple that I did, they were addicting and they made you want to continue, and they just made learning fun. So I feel like there's something there. And thank you for highlighting that for anyone listening that wasn't familiar with Trailhead is Salesforce. I think they own it, right? Or they're
They do.
behind the,
They
yeah.
do.
So like basically many lessons or larger trails that you can
Mm-hmm.
probably certainly speak to better than I can. But I feel like each kind of leads to a credential, which you can use to confirm your knowledge and to show, I guess, the workplace or potential employers that you have those skills, and you were able to leverage that. And look at you now.
Yeah, it was great. They gamify it. So if anything,
Yeah.
if you and your team are competitive, that was one of the best times we'd ever had. I remember there was a whoever had the most amount of hours towards their trailheads would win
Mm,
a prize, and they were good prizes, right? Like
yeah.
Salesforce came on site and said, okay, here's our top three. And we were
Nice.
so competitive, but we learned so
Yeah.
much. And we did it as a team, right? So if you think of all those layers, competition is healthy on teams. It really is. It helps us stay innovative. It helps us stay scrappy, for lack of a better term, so that we can really find the best ways to solution on behalf of our members and our customers. But not only that, you're one upping one another to push the next person further and harder.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a better way to inspire your teams to be the best that they can be. And not only that, but prove that they can be the best that they can be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that was a great way to put it. Is that they gamify it in a good way, and I feel like probably traditional education needs to adopt certain elements of that to stay relevant and to keep the kids and young adults' interest. So you're at Workday, you're doing amazing things, and I think you're about to move on to LinkedIn. So if you want to talk
Yep.
about that transition, including the interview, we love talking about
Oh,
interviews here, Liz.
gosh.
So if you have any tips, tricks, or horror stories, I mean, we love them all.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I did have the benefit that my previous manager was here. And so I was able to, even before I had applied, understand a little bit about the team and what it was that she was working on. I had an incredible recruiter, absolutely incredible, who was my partner along my whole journey through all of my interviews, who prepared me very well to understand who I would be speaking with, the type of questions that they would be asking me. My first interview was with someone who's now on my team today. Uh,
Hmm.
she she challenged me, she pushed me out of my comfort zone, but
Hmm.
she did it in a very welcoming way.
Hmm.
It didn't welcome me out, it welcomed me in.
Hmm.
And when you go and you look at our LinkedIn learning courses around interviewing, that is the goal of what we do. We interview people in. And so I felt that, I experienced that. When it was time for my panel interview, it was divided into four sections about how I would be supporting my team and my organization. There was a large section specific to EQ. I remember one of the questions I was asked was, tell me about the hardest thing you've ever experienced in your career. And I shared about when we actually lost a manager and what it had done to the morale of the team. And come to find out afterwards, that was the answer they were looking for. It wasn't about some technical thing, because there's always going to be something more technical than the
Yeah.
last. But at the end of the day, our teams are built off people's hearts and people's minds. And creating psychological safety within your team is paramount, and the ability to be able to do so. But I will say that one of the four I thought had blown me out, and I
Hmm.
didn't think I had done well. I was asked a
Hmm.
question that I didn't know an answer to.
Do you remember what it was?
It was a type of technology that was used at Workday.
Okay.
And considering that people see someone who works at Workday, and there's an assumption that we know all the Workday talent, that our
Mm.
Workday technical ins and outs, was not the case for me. And so I was asked a question I didn't know the answer to, and
How'd
I
you
thought
handle
I'd
that?
blown it. But I decided to take it instead of being a negative and make it into an opportunity. So I reached out to my development manager at Workday and asked him the question. He didn't know the answer.
Hmm.
So then I asked my lead architect of that technology, and he didn't know the answer either. So I said, all right, gentlemen, in the next 3 hours, I challenge all three of us to find this answer. And we did.
Hmm.
We found the answer. So I messaged on LinkedIn the hiring manager who had interviewed me. And I said, thank you so much for the opportunity of challenging me and my team out of our comfort zone. I took your question back to the team. They didn't know either, but we did find out the answer, and here's what it
Hmm.
is. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and speak with you, and also to help my team grow.
Hmm.
I got the job.
That is, I
I
mean,
got the job.
we have to pause there because that is so powerful what you did right there, because there was no risk for you doing that. Maybe it took a little bit of time because you and your team were researching it, but from what I've heard about you, Liz, you're naturally curious anyway, so you probably wanted to know what the answer was, even if it might not help you in your next play. But that's so powerful, and that translates to anyone listening, where even if you think you bombed an interview, that's a perfect example of taking a little bit extra initiative, going the extra mile, and finding the answer, and then casually but strategically conveying that to the decision maker in this
Mhm.
case, such that hey, you can take it or leave it. I just want you to thank you for challenging me. I found the answer, or my team and I found the answer, and thank you. You didn't even ask for anything, it sounds like, which is so smart, and it's just genuine, I
Yeah.
guess. And again, you got the job. So I just wanted to circle back and put a great big highlight through that for anyone listening, that is
Yeah.
absolutely translatable to pretty much any interview setting that I can think of where you feel like you may have bombed it.
Yeah. It rewarding to get the answer.
Sure.
And then when I got the call to say that I had made it through, it was cherry on the top of my ice cream. So it
Yep.
was pretty awesome. And I work with that individual on a very regular basis now, and we challenge each other all the time. And I'm very appreciative of them and what they have taught me since my journey has begun just a little over a year ago now here at
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
No, I love that. So now you are a staff technical program manager. Do you have a typical day in the life of?
Oh, so my programs that I'm right now, I'm working on fiscal year planning for both productivity engineering and the one go to market team. And so this started in December for both groups and will run through May as we're going to understand what our horizontal and vertical priorities are across the go to market space. And then across PE, what is it that we're doing to help engineering? And so every single day, I'm working with the different teams to understand how to represent their priorities, understand how to show what the business value is to LinkedIn, how that relates back to not only our PE themes, but also the strategic themes of the company. So it's an honor to be able to work on that kind of work. There are so many people that I get to meet and learn from on a daily basis. There's 17 to 18 different things that are new a day that comes out
Yeah.
of programs like this. And so that takes up a lot of my time, but so does working with my teams. A big piece of what I do is to look across the entire organization, see what the health of the organization is. What am I hearing? What is the pulse? EVS is one thing, our employee voice surveys, but another is what people actually say to me.
Right.
And what is it that I can do to help influence where there's opportunity to help everyone feel more confident and more comfortable, especially when we look at the economic climate of today. A lot of people are uncomfortable, they're nervous, they're scared. And so being able to be there for my team, listen to them, support them, and where I can, be that little extra something that they need in their days.
Yeah. No, that I can. I've never worked with you directly, Liz, but I can tell just from your story and from hearing you speak that I feel like your team definitely has the support that they need to do their best work. So thank you for that. It's
Thank
just
you.
your story is absolutely amazing. So I've got a few hot seat questions if you're up for them, just some rapid
Yep.
fire so we can better
Yep.
understand you. All right.
Sure thing.
What does your typical morning routine look like?
I get up, I go to the barn, I exercise my horse, I come home, I shower, I go to work.
I love that. Are you fully remote, hybrid? Do you always go into the office? I guess now in Arizona, I guess they don't have an office over there, do
Fully
they?
remote.
Fully remote. Good
Fully
for you.
remote.
All right. If money didn't exist, what do you think you would do every day?
I would work at the federal and state level to work as a victim advocate to
Mm,
make sure that attorneys and detectives, as they're working with victims, know how to actually speak to them and support them through their journeys.
I love that. All right. If you could send a single message to your former self to help you during your transition into tech and maybe to get through the things that you went through, what do you think that message would be?
You are smart, not just pretty.
I like it. Are there any books or podcasts that have had the biggest impact on you?
I just finished reading. My bonus son actually just gave me a couple of sci-fi books,
Mm,
and the thing about them, and I'm not going to go into titles here because I don't want to go crazy, but what I
sure.
love is that um, with combined families, you never know what that connector is going to be between you and those others.
Yeah.
For my bonus son and I, it is our love of science fiction and fantasy.
I
And
like it.
so right now that is so impactful because it's creating a bond between us that
Sure.
had we not found that, we wouldn't have it.
As a follow up and unplanned, are you Star Wars or Star Trek? If you had to pick one.
Star Wars.
I agree. Right? That is the right answer. All right. What's one thing you think that you're good at that most people might struggle with?
One thing I'm good at. Oh, this is I'm gonna just say it. I'm a lot nicer than I look. I am judged by my cover. And when people get past the cover, they're like, "Gosh, you're so nice." I am really nice. Just don't let this stop you from taking the chance to get to know me.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, is there anything else that you're working on that you want to share? I remember we talked way back when about a potential podcast.
Yes. So a friend of mine and I have started a YouTube channel. It's called Why So Curious. And we're, again, as both thrivers after trauma, we're really diving deeply into understanding more about how to thrive, how to be the author of your own story. Each weekday has a theme to it. So Mother Fighter Monday, Trauma Porn Tuesday, you catch the drift. And so every day there's a theme behind it. We only have 3 episodes out. We're brand new. Not very many subscribers yet, and that's okay. We're still working out the kinks and figuring out technology more than anything. But it's been a great platform for us to be able to give other thrivers a voice to help those who maybe didn't even realize they needed help, but also to give a platform for people to be able to share their stories and to be the authors of their own stories and not let their perpetrators be the ones who tell the stories for them.
Yeah, no, I'll add a link in the show notes and encourage everybody to check out the channel.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Where can people go to find out more about you?
About me? Gosh, because of what has happened to me in my past, I'm actually very private. But if there's someone who would like to connect, by all means, reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a note, and I would be more than happy to connect.
Okay. And I will also add that to the show notes. And
Perfect.
I guess to close us out, what would be your number one piece of advice, Liz, to anyone trying to break into tech that comes from that non-traditional background that thinks they can't do it?
Never give up. No matter how hard it is, no matter how defeated you may feel, think back to that conversation we just had about that interview. There's always an answer out there. And so continue to be curious, continue to be open, continue fighting against the norm, because you might be a little redheaded white girl who's trying to sit at the front of the room in a technology organization. And guess what? If I did it, you can do it too. So just keep fighting.
Amazing. Liz, I know I'm not the first one to tell you, but you have an absolutely amazing story, not just transitioning into tech, but everything you've been through, everything that you've persevered over. And yeah, kudos to you. We're looking forward to seeing great things from you in the future. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. If you got value from today's show, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. It's a free way you can support the show and help other people just like you find the story and others like it. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show on whatever podcast application you use. And most importantly, if you know someone that might be interested in breaking into tech, tell them about the show.